My name is Tim Freke. I call myself a philosopher, but essentially I'm simply a deeply curious human being. Today I'm in Colorado to speak to integral philosopher Ken Wilber. Ken is often cited as one of our leading living thinkers for his work on synthesizing science and spirituality. I came across Ken's books about 20 years ago, and his evolutionary ideas have been a big influence on my own.
We've been chatting since the moment we arrived, and your mind, one of the things I love about your work is exactly this encyclopedic quality which you bring to it. I feel that's the thing you bring more than anything else I love. But I want to start off a conversation with something really simple. Because I guess that's where it starts, I presume for all of us, for me it does, is that ever since I can remember as a little boy, I've been waking up in the morning and this is happening.
Yep.
And I've been wondering for the last almost, whatever it is now, nearly 60 years, of going, what is it? What should I do with it? What happens when it comes to an end? So maybe let's just start with the first one. What is it? You know, you've explored it in some detail. What's the essence of what you see this thing we're in is?
Right. Well, I mean, it really is true. And it's still true that it doesn't matter what kind of knowledge you have or how much you think you know about things or understand things or anything like that. The absolute mystery of our existence is absolutely core. You can't get rid of it. And I mean, look at this. I mean, this is actually happening. Do you believe that?
I know.
Where on earth is that coming from? And I mean, again, it doesn't matter how much you know or think you know. It's a bloody mystery. And that's what's interesting about it. Because what did seem to happen I've joked before that it's like, it looks like about the oldest Homo sapiens skeleton we have now, modern human skeleton. It looks like it was about 200,000 years, but now it looks like it's about 300,000 years old. And with all, you know, kind of like this, and I'm convinced that the very first words out of the very first human being, direct quote, is, "What the hell is going on?" And among other religion.
Yeah.
But it's just compelling, it's overwhelming. You can't get away from it. And yet there's no obvious, immediate answer to it.
Well, one of the things which I find remarkable is that everyone isn't walking around with it the whole time. It feels like, isn't it interesting that we're so unconscious collectively that we don't notice the most obvious thing? Because the most obvious thing is nobody knows what this is.
Yeah.
But actually, mostly, I mean, we don't notice that we don't know what this is.
Yeah. And one of the things that you have to sort of, it's almost a kind of decision that you have to make in the face of this mystery. And that is, do I think that either from what I've heard or from what I can tell in my own experience or whatever, do I have any reason to believe at all that there's some sort of ground of being that is there in some way, and that it can be connected with that mystery, might be that mystery itself. But because that mystery is sort of ever present, I mean, it just doesn't go away. And if you really are kind of standing back and looking at everything that's going on, in my experience, and there's only one thing that doesn't change, and that's that mystery is there all the time.
Yeah.
And that's
the one thing that doesn't change. That's right.
Like a ground of all being.
That's right.
It's
very good.
Spaceless,
I like that.
timeless,
Exactly.
Ever-present,
Yes.
eternal.
Yes.
Really. So then he sees occasionally worldwide. Well, one Jewish mystic was asked how to summarize his experience, his awareness, what was necessary to get whatever it was that he had. And it was very simple. He said, contemplate the mystery of your existence.
So one of the things which comes with that, so I would say my personal journey started, I had a kind of spontaneous awakening when I was 12, didn't stay, it was enough, I was off. And then it was like, and one of the things that was there straight away, which is always keeps coming back and seems essential, is also, there's the mystery,